Good morning and happy 12th of July. This is the anniversary of the creation of the Kingdom of England in 927. So, by my maths, that's 10,099 years ago. And it's also very big for the Patriots over in Northern Ireland. They've been having quite a bit of fun this week with their bonfires, and I wish them a happy 12th and keep the British end up, as it were. A lot of people would like to know why I flipped from Reform UK to Restore Britain. Now, I'm going to play a short clip from a longer podcast in a minute or so, and the podcast is called The Next Generation. I will link the full podcast in the description to this video. It's Charlie Downs, and he's debating a leftist by the look of it. It is a good podcast, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch Charlie's speech and we're going to have a look at it. And this is one of the reasons why I support Restore Britain. They're very clear, they're very specific, and they can hone in and identify the specific issues. Much like the legacy parties always do, they hone in and they identify what the issues are, the underlying issues, but they never actually articulate what they would do to fix the problem in any meaningful or any specific way. With Restore Britain, with Harrison Pitt designing policy and other key players in the background, they are putting in the legwork, they are putting in the hard yards to actually define and specify policy and make it a workable programme for government. When I'm looking at Reform UK, all I see is pyrotechnics, all I see is spin, all I see is people saying different things to different people on different days. It doesn't inspire confidence, quite the opposite. It inspires dread. It inspires the feeling we're going to get more of the same if they got in. If current polls are to be believed, if Andy Burnham did ask the King to dissolve Parliament and call a fresh election, we are looking at a Labour defeat, we are looking at a Reform UK Tory coalition. How would that be different to what we had with the previous 14 years? How would this work? This is the issue. When you've took in a lot of failed Tory ministers of the Crown into your ranks, how are they going to be any different to failing with the Tories? This is the issue that I have with career politicians, people who haven't had any lived experience. Now, these people, the detractors of Restore Britain, are very eager to say that most of the people behind the scenes are children. I think that is very, very disingenuous. 25, 30-year-olds, they're not children. They are the next generation coming through. If they want a country they can recognise, they need to be shaping the conversations and they need to be asking the hard questions of why the generation above them failed them. So I'm going to play the clip now and I'll dissect it as we go along.
We'll start with you, Charlie. What's your position specifically on remigration here for restore policy and ensuring a better future for young people?
Well, I want to begin by situating this conversation because the British Isles have been inhabited continuously since the end of the last ice age in the year 12,000 BC. And during that time, there have been waves of migration that have come in almost exclusively from northwestern Europe. This begins, of course, with the various Celtic tribes. The Roman Empire conquers these lands in the year AD 43, rules them for 400 years. After the collapse, the tribes of northern Germany, the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, migrate and establish their own kingdoms in what would become England. And during that time, of course, the Danes invade in various waves and control most of England during the reign of Alfred the Great. He pushes them out, and under the reign of his grandson, King Athelstan, the Kingdom of England is born in the year 927. Since then, for 50 unbroken generations, the Kingdom of England has persisted through famine, through war, plagues, and everything in between. We have remained stalwart in these lands. And my own ancestral profile is evidence of this history, because I've done an ancestry test, and it's a very interesting thing to do. I think everybody should do it, because it tells you about who you are, it tells you about where you're from. And my ancestry is about 90% Anglo-Saxon English, and the remaining 10% is a mixture of Irish, Danish, and various sort of smatterings from northwestern Europe.
I'm pretty much the same. I'm about 75% Anglo-Saxon, I'm about 20% Celts, and I think somehow, don't kick me out of the country, there's a little bit of French and Spanish thrown in there as well. But this is the issue. All Northern European, all modern westernized nations are my heritage. So everybody, the native British, we all have a vested interest in making sure that the country is recognisably the same, passing down through the generations. We have a duty of care that the country that we inherit is the same country we're going to be passing down to the next generation and the generation after. This is why all of Tony Blair's constitutional reforms that he brought in the late 90s need to go. They need to be abolished. When we hear Andy Burnham saying we need more of this, we need more devolution to the cities and the Celtic nations, I say no, we need to reverse and we need to pivot away from all of that. Either we are a United Kingdom or we are not a United Kingdom. Anything that Tony Blair had his greasy little fingers in needs to be looked at and examined.
Only if there was just some Chinese in there or something.
Yeah, well, as far as I'm aware, there's not. That didn't come up. But England has existed, therefore, for next year, 1100 years. It's the 1100th birthday of the Kingdom of England next year. So that's the history of migration, let's say up until the middle of the 20th century. Now, following the Second World War and all the atrocities that took place during that period, the British Empire begins to collapse, and the British government passes the British Nationality Act in 1948.
This was by the Attlee governments, a Labour government. Yet again, if you show me a policy that a Labour government brought in that actually benefited the United Kingdom or England, I'd like to see it. This British Nationality Act, now, Charlie does miss a very important point, and he doesn't actually mention it. Democracy. We were never asked, we never consented.
I love democracy. I love the Republic.
While he broadly gets right that the British Nationality Act extended a pathway to citizenship for former colonial possessions and dominions to come to the home of the empire and actually get a British passport and citizenship, what he doesn't say is Clement Attlee and his ilk in Labour, the Fabians, they didn't have this in a manifesto. Obviously, there was no television cameras in the House of Commons. Was there even a debate? And there was certainly no referendum on the matter. So up until that point, what it was to be British, English, Scots, Welsh, and Irish united under the Union Jack was fundamentally changed and diluted without democratic consent. He does not make this point. That's instructive because how far are they going to go in governments without a referendum? That's the caveat here. And I'm not against it. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Anything that the government has done to Britain without referendum, well, in theory at least, the constitutional theory would be you don't need a referendum, because all executive power and function of His Majesty the King is distilled into his cabinet and is first among equals the Prime Minister upon kissing hands. But I digress. Shall we continue?
This broadly opens Britain to former colonial subjects, and between then and now, we have seen the largest waves of migration that this country has ever experienced in this long period of history that I've been describing.
Since 1948, post-World War II, there's been more migration to this United Kingdom than in the previous 10 centuries, since the creation of England. Bear that in mind. When anybody, especially the right-leaning press, or the reportedly right-leaning press like the Daily Mail and the Telegraph, characterise Restore Britain as extreme for wanting to reverse this policy of mass migration, always point to that fact. Always point to, I would say, the extreme position is the position that we're currently in. And it was done without democratic consent. So don't talk to me about extremism.
And these have largely been from countries like India, the Caribbean, and the various other regions that Britain once ruled. What this has led to today is an existential crisis for the indigenous peoples of these isles. We are facing becoming a minority in our own homeland within the next 40 years.
I previously made this point on recent videos that all of the human rights legislation, where the police are now, but they're actually upholding universal human rights at the expense of protecting law and upholding the law and property rights of the native British people. The Equality Act, DEI, Race Relations Act, that's from the 1960s. All of these pieces of legislation are designed to criminalise people like me who were pointing out all of this has been done against our will and without democratic consent. People will choose to frame me and people in Restore Britain as racist. We're not making a racist argument. We are not saying non-white people need to go. We are saying this needs to be examined and looked at based on the practical and legal hurdles that would need to be overcome, like overturning the British Nationality Act. If we're examining the people that came from 1948 till 1997, have they integrated? If we're examining these people to say whether they can stay or whether they can go, this isn't racist because we're not framing it around that angle. We're framing it around the angle of, well, I would argue, democratic consent, or just a basic moral principle like Charlie's saying here, whereas it's something that's being done to us by the higher-ups. It's predetermined.
Already, white British births are at just 54% of live births. That was in 2024. And that phrase, by the way, white British, is not a racially loaded phrase. It's a census category used by the government to describe the English, Scottish, Welsh, and Irish ethnic groups. In other words, the indigenous peoples of the British Isles. And the prospect of those peoples becoming a minority fills me and a great many other people with fear. I worry about what this country will look like when my children and my grandchildren are the age that I am now, in their mid-20s. This is to say nothing, of course, of the economic impacts of this period of mass immigration which we have lived under for the last few decades, particularly since 1997. The average cost of housing is now 10 times the average salary, where in the 1970s it was just 3 times. The period of migration under Boris Johnson has led, over 2 million people came in on visas and will likely, under Andy Burnham, soon be granted citizenship. And these people, many of whom are pure dependents on the state, will cost the British taxpayer over £234 billion over the course of their lifetimes.
I recently had a comment on my channel from somebody who is a Restore Britain detractor, and they actually posited the question to me: mass migration is not responsible for the problems that we're facing in Britain. Essentially making the typical leftist arguments of you're scapegoating the poor lambs, the migrants. You're blaming them for government failure. Not really. I'm not blaming migrants per se. I don't tend to do that on my channel. This is all a failure of government policy. But guess what? As Charlie's saying here, house prices in Britain have increased tenfold in the past 30 years. If you haven't got enough houses, if the demand outstrips supply on a very basic economic level, you have a problem. So if you've got 1 million people on a housing list in Britain, and then you're injecting a further 2 million via the Boris wave, you've got a heck of a problem. And that doesn't help anybody who's looking to get on and get onto the property ladder. It helps the people that have already got houses, or people that have a property portfolio and they're eager to see that property portfolio increase in value. So, while mass migration may not be the cause of all the problems, it's certainly not helping. It is a failure of government policy. And I'll redirect right back to what I said previously. All of this has been done without democratic consent of the people. We never and will never consent.
In 2025, over 1.5 million foreign nationals were claiming universal credit, and this is simply not sustainable. It's unreasonable for people to come to our country and purely be a burden on the honest, decent, tax-paying British people.
I would consider it really bad form to go to any other country in the world and not be a net contributor. Certain countries like Australia do not allow you to emigrate over unless A, you can actually provide a skill that they need, and I don't mean a care worker like we've got in Britain, and you need savings in the bank to prove you can support yourself if you become unemployed, or at the very least to get a plane ticket home. You cannot claim benefits, and they don't have exceptions for Anglosphere nations like Canada, America, or any others. This is a hardline approach, but if you listen to the rulers in Britain, if you even say these things, you are racist.
But the economics is secondary for me to the demographic aspect of all of this. I mean, we're sitting in a studio in Hackney right now, and Hackney at the last census was 33.9% white British. It is a microcosm of what is to come across the rest of this country over the coming decades. And whilst, sure, there is peace in Hackney right now, just as there is peace in many other parts, diverse parts of the country, it is my belief that this project of multiculturalism, this idea that you can bring in people from radically different cultures, faraway lands, and that everybody will just integrate and get along with each other perfectly, is a myth. It is a fantasy. Now,
it is a myth. It is a fantasy. You don't need to believe in that. It is a matter of undeniable fact. If multiculturalism was going to work, you would not need laws to protect the diversity from the native British population. People would not be getting arrested when they re-enter the United Kingdom, like podcaster Craig Houston up in Scotland, on anti-terrorism laws because he's posted some spicy stuff on a political channel. All right, that's perfectly fine. That's freedom of speech. And if diversity was really a strength, diversity didn't build Britain, by the way. That is a lie. If it was really a strength, it would be self-evident. They wouldn't have to wheel these ideas out all the time. They wouldn't have to indoctrinate people with this in schools and universities. It would be self-evident.
Now, while the getting is good, while the economic circumstances are positive when there is prosperity, this is less of a problem because people can get by. People aren't angry. People aren't, going hungry and all the rest of it. But as increasing geopolitical instability increases and things get more expensive and bad government leads to increasing prices in all domains of life, the anger that will bubble up as a result will only be exacerbated by this diversity. Therefore, the policy that is generally referred to as remigration, that's not a term that we use at Restore Britain. We say reversing mass immigration because we feel that is clearer, is an absolute necessity if this country is to have any future at all. For us, this means a series of policies. It begins with deporting all illegal migrants who currently reside here, of whom we predict there are upwards of 2 million.
So let's be clear on a few things that Charlie said there. Diversity didn't build Britain. Most of the immigration into Britain happened post-1948. The vast majority, so less than 100 years. England itself is nearly 1100 years old. The United Kingdom itself is over 300 years old. Diversity didn't build Britain. Multiculturalism can work when the cultures are similar to each other. And that's why the union between England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland has been so successful, is because the underlying populations were already extremely similar. When you look at the European Union, even though we're all white Western Europeans, or we were to begin with, you run into problems there as well, because they're not as similar as we all are on the British Isles. Never, never let anybody say that we would not have a country if we didn't have migration. That is a lie. The best parts of England, the best parts of this United Kingdom, were built on the blood, sweat and tears of the people that came before us, and they were not foreigners.
We then move to foreign nationals who have, yes, come here legally, but come here legally against the wishes of the vast majority of the British people. It's undemocratic, it's immoral. And if they can't speak English, if they live in social housing, if they are a burden on the taxpayer, or frankly, if they hate our way of life, then we will remove them if we win a government. That is the priority for the time being, and that will cover upwards of 10 million people. And the alleviation of pressure that would result in on the housing market, on public services, on wages, and of course on the demographic reality of Britain would be nothing but a good thing.
So here's the thing. A lot of people say Restore Britain doesn't go far enough. A lot of people say that Rupert Lowe is weak sauce. I don't agree. I support Restore Britain. I support Rupert Lowe. I support this chap Charlie, and I hope to meet him in a few weeks. This is a start. This is all in the right direction. There could have been more emphasis on democracy. There could have been more emphasis on education for the layperson, but pretty much everything is spot on. He's only, I think, 25, 26. Bit wet round the ears, that's pretty clear. But there's not much to disagree with. Now, you comment below and you let me know, do you think he's right? Do you think he's wrong? We'll end this clip here. You see, many people who are sympathetic to Reform UK talk the talk with a lot of these talking points on TV, whether that's your Alex Phillips, Belinda DeLucy, Matt Goodwin, Gawain Towler. They'll trot out these concepts on how mass migration has destroyed Britain, it's not working, crimes by migrants, all the statistics. They'll trot out all of this information, and it can make for compelling, and it can make for good TV, or a good op-ed, or a nice column in a newspaper. But as soon as the native British population try to assert themselves and give specific, detailed policy on how we can stop the Titanic sinking, they try to cancel you. They try to run you out of politics, and they treat you like Frankenstein's monster simply because you want a country that you can recognise as England or Britain. This is what we're fighting against. This is what we need to change. If you think Charlie is weak sauce, if you think Restore Britain doesn't go far enough, make me aware. If you think my characterisation of Reform UK is unfair, make me aware. There are great people in Reform, the grassroots, and a lot of great activists. As always, this is not an attack on them. Yesterday's Reform voter is tomorrow's Restore Britain member. Have a good day. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the 12th, and happy birthday, England.